Welcome back, and a special welcome to our next guest, one of our regulars about this time each week. I'm proud to say his name is Bill Walton. He is the host these days of The Bill Walton Show, a terrific television podcast that I commend to all of you. He is a man who brings to that position considerable experience in a lot of different aspects of political and public life as well as the business sector. He was the master of the universe on Wall Street for a time with Allied Capital. He was the president of the Council for National Policy, a terrific conservative leadership organization of which I'm proud to be a member. And he is these days one of our favorite guests. We're always delighted to have him with us. Bill, welcome back.
Frank, great to see you.
Thank you. Let me start with the three C's that you have, I think, distilled very nicely to depict kind of the themes that are now cross-cutting, but very much interconnected in American political and public life. What are those three C's, Bill?
Well, sticking with the Steve theme, conflation's a good word to talk about the three issues that I think are aimed at the heart of American sovereignty and our freedom. One of them, obviously, is China. The other one is the climate change agenda. And the third one is the critical race theory, also known as diversity, equity, and inclusion, which aims to hollow out the military by ending meritocracy in the military and instead bringing in promotion by identity. And all three of these things, and of course, the climate change agenda is really aimed at modern civilization. Their ultimate aim is to reduce us to an impoverished life that we're living in the 12th century and live a simpler, more peasant-like life and not harm the environment. It's crazy.
With fewer of us around as well. Yeah, Bill, that's a wonderful way to sort of structure our conversation today because you have become really a very knowledgeable resource on all three. But I want to start with China. What we've been discussing now for, well, I think it's years, it seems, is the growing power of the Chinese Communist Party, fueled by investments from American elites, captured, as the Chinese call them, captured elites, notably some of your old friends on Wall Street. What we're watching, Bill, I think clearly is this thing coming a cropper. And yet, as we've been talking about, many of those in your former line of work and more generally in the business community, sort of represented by the 400 who groveled and paid $40,000 for the privilege, no less, before Xi Jinping, Emperor Xi, when he was in San Francisco 2 weeks ago. They're still of the view that as long as it's not illegal to be pouring money or technology or intellectual property or basically any other thing the Chinese want into the Chinese Communist Party, they're going to do it. When you say you're concerned about China, we all should be. Doesn't it have to start with some sort of remedy to that problem?
Well, they seem to, my so-called friends in the masters of the universe world seem oblivious to the real threat from China. And they showed up at this dinner praising President Xi of China a couple of weeks ago. And we had Steve Schwarzman of Blackstone. We had Tim Cook of Apple. We had, of course, Larry Fink. And we had, I'm sure, Bridgewater, Ray Dalio was there. And they, as you said, paying $40,000 for a seat at the head table. And they gave him a standing ovation. And
I think three to be precise.
I lost count. I wasn't, three. Okay, well,
coming and going and one in the middle.
And what are they standing and applauding for? I think they're standing and applauding for their once imagined glory, making billions of dollars from the relationship with the Chinese Communist Party. And let's face it, to do business in China, all of those companies that they had to have a deal with them to look the other way at things like human rights violations and their buildup in the military so we're still seeing a blinkered-eyed I don't know if that's quite the right word, but they're closing an eye to these real risks. And of course, part of the problem is they're going to follow political leadership. Most business people and finance people, surprisingly, follow the rules that Washington gives them, and they'll follow the regulations. And if there were an alarm issued by, say, Janet Yellen of the U.S. Treasury, that we ought to be on notice about how we do business with China and ought to be withdrawing and strategic. We can't do it overnight, but we can start getting strategic about it. She's doing just the opposite. I mean, if she didn't give 3 standing ovations, but she she went over a couple of months ago, and it was really, Frank, performance art. How many times she could find different ways to bow
Yeah.
in front of
Bobblehead.
President Xi. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, we spoke earlier in the program, Bill, with Gordon Chang about, among other things, Patrick McHenry, chairman of the House Financial Services Committee, insisting that the National Defense Authorization Act take out restrictions that were in, I believe, the Senate version of it, that would impinge upon these kinds of, investments in China. And I just have to say, how on earth are we ever going to fix this problem if the guys who say, well, as long as it's not illegal, we're going to do it, use their lobbying power, which is considerable, to ensure that it remains legal to do that?
We,
It's just a formula for disaster, isn't it?
we've talked about this before. It's inconceivable to think of a Soviet lobby, Russian, during the Cold War, but now we have a massive China lobby in the United States, actively registered, and they've got a force multiplier in the large multinational corporations and Wall Street and the lobbying that they do on behalf of China. And so they're deeply involved in influencing policy. The only way we can change that is to send them stronger signals from the administration. And in my favorite choice is Janet Yellen at Treasury. We have a group inside Treasury called CFIUS, which is supposed to monitor foreign investment in the United States, and they're doing a lousy job at that. And even worse, they don't measure a single dime of the investment that goes from the United States into China.
Bill, we're going to come back on that thought. Hold on just one second. We'll be right back with more on the other side of a short break with Bill Walton. Stay tuned.